Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. All right. Again, happy Uposita. And this evening, I thought to uh, kind of reflect on something near and dear to my heart, and that is Dhamma. Though by way of kind of slightly revisiting something we discussed, I don't know if it was this Wednesday or the Wednesday before. Um, there's something that the Buddha gives in the suttas called the anussati, and it's translated as recollection. And specifically, he gives a lot of anussati, a lot of recollections at different times to different groups of people. But there was one instance where he gave one in a kind of blanket way that applies very well to lay people or to people who are not monastics. And there's a particular context, I think, that shapes it very well. As this particular sutta, this well-known sutta, was given to a character named Mahanama. And Mahanama, it's not really explicitly said in the Pali Canon, but Mahanama had a lot of responsibilities, even though he was a kind of timid and soft-spoken and not really aggressive person. You wouldn't know from just reading the suttas that he was actually the king of the fierce warrior Sakyan clan. They were something of a republic, but they had a chief. And this chief position was sort of hereditary, but in a loose kind of way, that if the line was broken, it just passed to some other family, related family, and that person would become chief. So you probably see where that's going is the Buddha was the prince and in line to be the next chief of the Sakyan clan. But he went off and became a Buddha. And then one of the very first things he did was he came back to the land of the Sakyans, to the capital of Kapilavatthu, and he sort of like scooped up and ordained all of his cousins and half brothers and half sisters and like a whole generation of the nobility. He came back and he explained the Dhamma, and they ordained and they became part of the Sangha. And so, I imagine the palaces in that part of India became a lot quieter all of a sudden, as everybody went off and shaved their heads and started practicing for enlightenment. And because of that process, and because the Buddha wasn't there to be next in line, his father eventually passed away and somebody had to take charge. And as it so happened, there were two brothers who realized they were next in line. One was Mahanama and one was Anuruddha. Anuruddha is a pretty well-known figure. He developed the divine eye and he could see all the cosmos. And he also, less well-known, but he was quite a proponent of the four Satipatthana. He just he taught about how wonderful the four foundations of mindfulness were. Um, so these two brothers, they get together, they put their heads together, and they say, "Look, I'm doing the math, and it seems like we're next in line. One of us is going to have to be king." And Anuruddha was the eldest, and he said, "Good luck, Mahanama." And he went off and became a monk as quickly as he could. And anywhere else in history, brothers would fight to be king. But in this particular instance, one of them pulled rank to not be king and got out of it and went and became fully enlightened. So he's probably the winner in that. Mahanama was, he was, even though he's part of this warrior clan, known to be pretty fierce people, he was not a particularly fierce person. And he's actually he's very likable and very down to earth. But he's put in this position of responsibility, so he just takes it on. And he ends up having a lot of work to do and having to somehow keep the kingdom together, despite all the things that are going on. And as it turns out, he's the last of the Sakyan kings because he was there when something that was done previous to him, the karma kind of ripened and the Sakyans were wiped out in a big sort of genocidal war. So he was the last one in charge. Not his fault, but he stuck with it to the end. Um, just an lots of interesting history. But Mahanama is kind of a stand-in in the suttas. He had this opportunity where it's clear that the Buddha had some compassion for him, kind of like liked him because Mahanama was able to go to the Buddha and get a number of good discourses that we have recorded in the Pali Canon. And I think the Buddha must have a lot of compassion for him, given the circumstances. Yeah. And one of these suttas is on the anussati. So Mahanama goes to the Buddha and asks, uh, because he hears that the Buddha is going to leave Kapilavatthu, and he says, how should we practice? He's distraught because, he's really relying on this relationship he has with the Buddha that he can go and ask for Dhamma reflections and get his questions answered and hear Dhamma talks. It's keeping him sane in his position of responsibility. And he hears the Buddha is going to be leaving. What is he going to do? And the Buddha, interestingly, he lays out the anussati. And now we have sati, is very important in Buddhist practice. And sati means mindfulness, but it's a sort of mindfulness. It means to remember. So when we have sati, we are remembering a piece of information in a particular way. It's almost like we're bringing that piece of information into a moment where other things are happening. When we have sati, we're keeping tabs on something that we want to remember despite whatever is happening in front of us. Yeah, and this can be the foundations of mindfulness. It's like we have a body, we have feelings, we have a mind, we have these dhammas that we've heard. It can be really a bunch of things, but it's usually something concrete. We usually develop mindfulness through repetition. Like I want to remember this at important times. But when we expand this to the idea of anussati, to recollection, it's a lot like what the word mindfulness in English means. In English, the word mindfulness was it's been around for quite a while, but one time when it really got used in a particular religious sense, which is why it was applied to Buddhism when they started to translate Buddhist texts into English, was it was used for the recollection of God. And so Christian monastics found that even if they put on the robes and they went and lived in a monastery, that if they just went about their business on a day-to-day basis, um, without any particular training or thought or application of mind, they would respond to situations the same way that they had back in the village, like they had grown up, like they had always responded to situations. Yeah. So they were taught to recollect God. They were taught to contemplate God and think of the qualities of God and develop this awareness of God that they could take with them throughout the day. And they found that, of course, this is a good thing. It affected their sila, it affected their morality, it affected their state of mind. It made their minds brighter, more energized, and it encouraged all sorts of positive qualities like humility and faith and compassion. Remembering all of these things brought a lot of context into their life. And this is the same, very same idea that we use these six recollections for in Buddhism. When we're out and about and we're just moving through our day, there's really only two options, and that's we take everything at face value and we respond to it in the way that we're conditioned to respond to it, for good or for ill. Now, if we've done a lot of practice and a lot of positive responses are there in our mind, then we'll have positive responses to situations. We'll respond with goodwill, with compassion, with equanimity. We'll respond with wisdom and renunciation. But if we have a lot of bad habits, then that's what we've conditioned. We'll respond with anger and envy and confusion, because that's what we've conditioned. If we don't have mindfulness, we just react as we've grown up, as we've grown accustomed to. Yeah. But when we have mindfulness, or when we're doing a recollection, we have a choice. Yeah. Suddenly we're bringing in something completely outside of our immediate circumstances in order to provide this wonderful context to what we're doing. And it allows us to have a big picture view of what we're doing and decide, do I want to react in the way that I'm conditioned, or do I want to choose a different way of acting? Yeah. And these recollections are specifically encouraged for lay people because they cultivate all of the things that allow us to improve our situation in life. And three of them are very kind of obvious. The recollect the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Yeah, now these are the conditions for growth and faith and wisdom, and to recollect the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And they do both. They give us something to have confidence in, but they also encourage us to reflect on the reality of the possibility of enlightenment and the reality of enlightened beings all around us. Yeah, and this encourages the growth in wholesome qualities. Now, this is good for lay people, and it's good for monastics, it's good for everybody. And then there's the other three recollections, which are the recollection of sila, morality, the recollection of chaga, or generosity, and the recollection of the devas. So these are really, as we are talking about in previous week, these are really tailored, especially for lay people, because if you get no further in practice or in development during this lifetime, these recollections have set the stage or set the conditions for a positive future existence. Yeah. Now, they do that in the current life too. If you reflect on sila, you're going to eventually develop better sila, probably. You're thinking about it a lot. You're contemplating the consequences of your actions, yeah? But in terms of like reflecting on the devas, yeah, not really any guarantee that will yield a ton of immediate benefits. Now, I happen to think it will yield, if you do it diligently, it will yield a lot of encouragement and wholesome qualities. Yeah, because when the Buddha explains that recollection, he explains, well, you'll reflect on the faith that caused the devas to be reborn as devas, and that will encourage you to develop faith. And you'll reflect on the learning, the knowledge and the application of the devas that caused them to be reborn. You'll reflect on the wisdom of the devas. You'll reflect on the generosity of the devas. All these good things that cause the devas to be reborn as devas, and they're good things that you can have right now. Yeah, so you'll be thinking about good things, and then good things will become available as an option, as a response to whatever you face in your life. Yeah. And I was thinking about these reflections, these recollections, and how do you choose like which one to talk about? Like, this is the second time in this group I've brought these up, and we can either talk about all of them like very lightly, just give a brief overview, and then say go do it. It's a really good thing. You should really be doing it. Or we can select one and kind of focus on it. But which one do we choose? Well, as it turns out, you don't have to do all six necessarily all the time. You might find that one is particularly useful for you. And this is something that we're allowed to do in Buddhism. We're allowed to have favorites and kind of focus on it. Now, there is actually a bit of a tradition around the first three reflections, like what they're for and what they are an antidote for. The recollection of the Buddha is said to be an antidote to suffering. And I can't really get into the nuts and bolts of it because we don't really have a technical manual on how this works. But as it turns out, when you reflect on the Buddha, if it makes your suffering more tolerable, and not just because, the Buddha was enlightened and he was equanimous in the face of whatever he went through in life, not just because that he was well accomplished. So if there was a kind of suffering, he experienced it on his way to enlightenment. But also it's just a very encouraging thing to think that enlightenment is possible. And when we reflect on the Buddha, that's what we're reflecting on. We're recollecting that enlightenment is possible. The Buddha did it. He was able to teach his disciples to do it. And that means we can do it. It's possible for us. And when we're suffering, that's a really good message. That's a really good thing to be able to recollect, right? So the Buddha is the antidote to suffering. The Dhamma is given as the antidote to fear, bhaya, which is very interesting. And I think for Mahanama, particularly, the Buddha gives a lot of Dhamma talks, and he encourages Mahanama when Mahanama is worried and timid and afraid to you don't worry, Mahanama. You've learned much. You've heard the Dhamma. You've had faith for a long time. You're not going to go to a bad place, no matter what happens to you. And yeah, it's entirely possible the Buddha had some foresight as to what would happen to Mahanama. But the thing was, when the end came, Mahanama was apparently quite able. He responded to it quite well. But that's a whole story that I encourage you to look up. I won't get into. Mahanama didn't have fear in the end. He just acted for the good of his people. But at the time he was getting these recollections, he still had plenty of fear. He was afraid of all sorts of things and overwhelmed with his responsibilities. But reflecting on the Dhamma is one of these things that we can do to kind of ground ourselves in confidence. And then the recollection of the Sangha is given as the antidote to disease. It's just very interesting to think about. Like, how does that work mechanically? I don't know. Like reflecting on I'm surrounded by other people who are practicing well, practicing directly, practicing with integrity. How does that free you from illness? Um, yeah, yeah, I don't know. But isn't the worst part of illness the thought that we're alone in it? And that having to deal with the weight of being ill, being indisposed. Like, it's hard to look after ourselves into normal, healthy circumstances, but when we're sick, it's so much harder to look after ourselves. But then, if we have good people around us who are compassionate, who are interested in our welfare, and who chip in and help take care of us when we're sick, doesn't that make it? It's like it just makes it so much more tolerable, yeah? Isn't it so wonderful and humbling that when we can't do everything for ourselves, others chip in? And in a lot of ways, that's the function of Sangha. Yeah, is that we are not yet enlightened. Yeah, we can't yet do everything for ourselves. But recollecting on the Sangha is recollecting that we have other people to our left and to our right who are uh, checking in on us, interested in our welfare, offering what help they can to help us along the way and fill in for where we're not yet strong, not yet wise, not yet fully established. And that's a wonderful thing. And it kind of it takes a little the sting out of the delusion, the greed, hatred, and delusion that we still have. Yeah. So we've got these three recollections, and This is one I pitched to the Indonesian Buddhist family where I'm staying on Sunday. And like, so you have the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Which one is the most important? And these are the kind of questions I like pitching out to a group of like ethnic Buddhists, people who've grown up, born Buddhists, to give them a paradox. It's like, how could you do this? How could you try to rate which is better, the Buddha Dhamma Sangha? And I'm like, you're right, you're right, you're right. It's a hard question. Yeah. There's no right answer to that. One person says Buddha, one person says Sangha. They're both right. Those are both really good recollections. So let's reframe it. Which of the three recollections comes first? And now that's a bit curious. A lot of people said the Buddha. The Buddha comes first, right? Because there wouldn't be Dhamma, wouldn't be Sangha without the Buddha. But if you ask the Buddha would say the Dhamma comes first because the Dhamma was there before the Buddha realized it. And if you ask which one survives the longest, well, again, the Buddha would say the Dhamma, because the Dhamma will still be there long after everybody has forgotten. But now it becomes clear when we answer in that way that the Dhamma is not merely the teachings of the Buddha. And so I think this recollecting the Dhamma can bear a lot of fruit when we're willing to expand the definition of the Dhamma and see it in the way that the Buddha saw it. You know, what is it that's so amazing about the Dhamma is that the Dhamma is not merely teachings. Yeah. Now, we've talked about the Dhamma a lot, so well, you've heard me lay it out many times that the Dhamma, we have three different definitions that in the Pali language for what Dhamma is. And one definition of Dhamma is thing, phenomena. Yeah, so anything that exists, anything that's real is a Dhamma. It's a Dhamma. Yeah. But then the second definition is the nature or reality of something. Yeah. So say we have an apple and somebody asks you, what does the apple taste like? Well, you would say, well, it's very sweet, you know, it's very juicy, it's very delicious. But it's a funny thing. If somebody asked you, you would say that, and the thing is you don't know because you haven't eaten the apple, you're just holding the apple. But if you know basically what apples taste like, you can say what the apple tastes like. The taste of an apple is like this. But is that the reality of the situation? No, that's just a description, right? But if you were to bite the apple, then it doesn't matter what people have told you the apple tastes like. You know for yourself what the apple tastes like. You know its Dhamma. You know its nature. Oh, the taste of an apple is like this. This is the taste of an apple. And in the future, if you encountered that flavor, you would say, oh, this is the flavor of apple. I am familiar with this reality, this nature, this Dhamma of apples. Yeah. Even if you couldn't think of the name, you would know, I know this. I've experienced this. Yeah. And then the third definition of Dhamma was not limited just to the Buddha's teachings. The third definition is a teaching which points at the first two definitions of Dhamma. Yeah. So just a kind of teaching like how to cook rice. It's not Dhamma. Yeah. Dhamma was specifically used for religious and philosophical and technical sort of cosmological teachings that try to explain to people the way things are, which try to explain the nature of things, or try to point to actual existing things in the world. Yeah, and this is the Dhamma that we've been given by the Buddha is this third kind of Dhamma. But now getting a little mischievous again, it's like, which one's the best? Which one's the most sublime definition of Dhamma? Yeah, and everybody's wise to me now, and you say, well, it's okay. You want me to say it's number three, that the Buddha's teaching is the most, but I know you, so it's got to be one of the other two. But now the first one sounds a little bland, right? Phenomena, just basic phenomena. This is the highest form of Dhamma. But there's an interesting thing to that. So where's my trusty pen when I need it? I'm going to use a mouse. Yeah. So this is a mouse. Yeah, a computer mouse. It is a Dhamma. It exists. Yeah. It has a Dhamma in that it has a reality, the reality of mice, computer mice, which is to click and to move pointers and to do the little mice things. Now, if I were to throw this on the ground and it were to shatter into a bunch of pieces, would this suffer? No. Would I suffer over it? Yes. I would not be able to do anything more on this stream. That would be the Dhamma talk would go on, but I wouldn't be able to close out. I wouldn't be able to do anything else. Yeah. I would suffer because my mouse is gone. Yeah. So when we look at which kind of Dhamma is the most important Dhamma for us to learn, it would be phenomena, becoming to know the actual structure of the world around us, what it is made of, is becoming to know what is real. Yeah, because the second definition of Dhamma is the reality of things as we experience it. But this is not the highest reality, because the highest reality is the thing itself. And it doesn't need me experiencing it to have that reality. Yeah, and the highest reality we want to understand is that reality which is free of suffering, just the way things are, free of interpretation, free of us. Yeah. And the third definition of Dhamma, the teachings which point to truth, are all trying to get us to realize this highest truth. Yeah, and that is their function. And as the Buddha said, that once we understand the teachings themselves, the book teachings, are no longer necessary. Yeah. And there's this idea in the Mahayana, this you probably heard it, of the finger pointing at the moon. Yeah. It's this image that's given, and it's to explain this very concept. It's like, as I was just saying at the beginning, it's like I don't know if it's a full or new moon because I'm in a city and I can't see the horizon. And so I don't know where the moon would be, even if it was. But if somebody were to walk outside and point and say, look, there is the moon, I wouldn't be seeing the moon, would I, just by listening to their explanation. But if I were to follow their finger and look in that direction, I would see the moon for myself. And then I would know it is there. This is what its reality is like. At that point, they can put down their finger because whether or not they have their finger up, I can see the moon and I now know the moon. And so their finger is irrelevant. And the same way, all of the teachings that the Buddha gives and that his disciples give on and on through history are all for the purpose of us realizing truth, seeing it for ourselves. Yeah. This is a wonderful quality of the Dhamma. So when we reflect on Dhamma, we're reflecting on there are teachings in the world which are meant to get us to see truths. And there are truths in the world which are true regardless of if anybody teaches them. Things that have always been and always will be, things that are true from every perspective, true at all times. And reflecting on this builds a confidence in us. Yeah. And the wonderful thing is, we don't have to know what the truths are to get the benefit from this recollection, right? Just recollecting that there are truths in the world is a fantastic way to clear up confusion and doubt and fear, right? Because it's bringing in this piece of information that we could otherwise be likely to forget, that we live in an orderly world. The Buddha called this the orderliness of the Dhamma. Yeah, there are structures to the way the universe works, whether or not we know it. We're often the victim of these structures. We're just kind of getting pulled along karma and physical forces and all of this. But there are structures nonetheless. And the more that we reflect that they exist, the more we feel, oh, okay, this is not random. This is not chaotic. This can be learned. This can be known. I can see this for myself. And that also reframes for us why the teachings are so important, because they help us learn these things. And the reflections that were given for the Dhamma, if you remember them, this is something we chant at least 2 or 3 times a day in any Buddhist monastery. And it's Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Panayiko Pachatang Weditabo Winyuhi. And I know I've given Dhamma talks, we've gone over these again and again, but it's to say that these epithets for the Dhamma, that the Dhamma is well explained, the Dhamma is directly visible, the Dhamma is timeless, the Dhamma encourages investigation, and it's sequential, it leads onwards. And finally, that the Dhamma is something which each wise person can realize for themselves. When the Buddha gives these criteria, in some ways, he's giving the criteria by which we grade his Dhamma. The reason the Buddha's Dhamma has been passed on for so many generations is because of these very qualities that we see in it. Yeah, it's well explained, meaning it's not in riddles. There are not theories. It's not just guesses at how the world works. It is, it's well explained. It's well laid out. And it's purposeful, right? It has the purpose of freeing us from suffering, but it's also directly visible. And so again, it's not just a hypothesis about how the world works. If there's something that you can't put to the test and see for yourself, then the Buddha doesn't describe it. Yeah. Now there are some things that we might not be able to verify for ourselves, like the different heavenly realms and the existence of the devas. We might never develop the psychic powers to be able to confirm that for ourselves, but we could confirm it for ourselves under certain circumstances. And so the Buddha taught about this. Yeah. And sometimes he would teach about it and he would ask people, like, do you believe it? And they'd say, no, I don't. I have never seen anything like that. And he'd say, good. You shouldn't just believe what you're told. Yeah. If you can't verify it for yourself, then set it aside. There will be plenty of things which the Buddha teaches which you can verify for yourself. The whole path can be verified. You can do it and get the results for yourself. Yeah. The Dhamma is timeless. It applies today in the same way it applied 2,600 years ago, because it's not dealing with things that are specific to a culture, a place, a time. It's dealing with human realities, the physical realities. Yeah, that's what we're most interested in. And then it's laid out in such a way that because it has a goal, it can point out things along the way to that goal. And there's this interesting quality as giving a talk, and somebody, as they were listening to me talking about how wonderful it is that the Dhamma encourages investigation and leads us onwards, and it brings up all of these great questions that gets us like peering into the nature of the world. And they said, well, I was raised a Catholic, and it's just striking me how different this is. Like when I was growing up, I would ask questions of the teachers and the figures in the church, and I was told, stop asking so many questions. It's going to get in the way of having faith. Just have faith. Yeah, you're being told the way things are. Just accept it. And he said, this is just so different. But this is the reality that once you get used to these qualities of the well-explained Dhamma, you begin to expect to be able to ask questions. Yeah. You begin to expect, like, this is for me, right? You're not just saying this because it sound important. You're saying this because it's useful. Well, am I not the one who gets to decide at the end of the day if it's useful? If I can apply it to my own life? And that's what the Dhamma is for. Each wise person can sort of cherry pick all of the important bits from this vast canon of teachings that work for them, and they can pursue them and they can go on. So like the six recollections are given, and the Buddha doesn't say it's like you have to do all six and you have to do them in order. If you get one that really works for you, like the recollection of the Sila, then recollect Sila all day, all night. Make it, a sturdy pillar, unshaken by circumstances. And you will develop. You will develop in the right way. Yeah. And once you realize for yourself the benefits of that recollection, you don't need anybody to tell you that it's a good recollection. Instead, you will become the one telling others. Oh, like, yeah, recollecting Sila. Sila is a wonderful thing. It's good to have Sila. And your whole approach to life will be changed by that recollection. Yeah. You yourself can realize that. And so, how do we recollect the Dhamma? Well, again, this is one that this is sort of turning it on its head, though, is this is not something others can do for us. Yeah. When I think of my own development, like when I first arrived at the monastery, there are a lot of things I just had to do what I was told. Yeah, people said it's like, oh, the Dhamma is so wonderful, it's so vast, there's so many good answers to it. But I was completely dependent on my teachers. It's like, what do I do? They'd say, sit down, follow your breath, read some suttas, listen, ask questions. Yeah, when something doesn't make sense, ask, and I will try to explain it the best I can. And then for the most part, they were saying, be patient. It will take time. So the purpose of these recollections is not that there's a right answer. The purpose of the recollections is to bring the awareness into your daily life and have it just sit there and develop and grow on the side. And if you do bring it, then you will find that it does develop. Yeah. So the first thing we might struggle to just remember the epithets of the Dhamma. We might struggle just to remember it's like, okay, it's apparent here and now. Maybe that's all we can remember. But the more we say that, it's like, what does that mean? At some point, we're going to start to really investigate, well, what is the difference between a Dhamma that is directly visible and one that's not directly visible? And then, maybe we're eating Chinese food and we get a fortune cookie and we open it up because it's going to tell us our future, right? And it says, good fortune is coming your way. And we're like, that's a completely worthless Dhamma teaching, right? It actually doesn't tell me anything, right? Because what do you do with a Dhamma teaching like that? Well, you just wait until something good happens and then you say, oh, it's just like the cookie said. It could take an hour, it could take a week. But the next time something good happens, well, oh, it must have been that was what my fortune meant. Otherwise, it's completely useless. Yeah. But the Dhamma's teaching is the Buddha's teaching is not like that. Yeah. It says sati is good, mindfulness is good. If you try it, then you're like, oh, well, that's what they mean by good. Yeah, my mind is less chaotic. I have the ability to choose to not do the things that get me in trouble. Yeah, sati is good. Yeah. And that's a good Dhamma teaching then. Once we get it, we don't need the finger pointing at the moon anymore. Yeah. And then it's visible for us here and now. We're like, ah, that's what that means. Yeah, I see. Yeah. And for each of us, there are things that we are absolutely confident in by now, or you would not have sat here for 40 minutes and listened to me talk about this little hobby that I've got. Of reflecting on the Dhamma and the Buddha and thinking about people who've been dead for 2,600 years. Yeah, but you've stuck with it precisely because you have realized for yourself there's some things here which are useful, which are good. Yeah. And that's all that we do with these recollections is instead of going about our day and just trying to survive, which I mean is a kind of is a consolation prize if we get through the day and we've survived. Okay, great. Tomorrow's another day. We might have a chance to practice. But if we go through the day and we survive and we were reflecting on the Dhamma, well, then a lot of good things can happen. Yeah, a lot of changes can happen, a lot of insights can happen. Same period of time passed, but in two totally different ways. And so this is an opportunity we have, something we can cultivate. Yeah. So this is just what I've been reflecting on lately as I'm here in this concrete jungle, not being able to see the moon, thinking about the Dhamma, and thinking that even if I can't see the sky in any particular direction, and it's quite loud at all times. There's a jackhammer going the other day right outside the window. Nevertheless, things like that happen, and I said, "Oh, yeah, there is suffering. There's a cause of suffering. There's an end of suffering. There's a way to the end of suffering. I should go meditate." And stop thinking about the jackhammer. Yeah. And so that has been for me these recollections. Yeah. And I offer them to you to encourage you in your daily life. You can also maybe take some bit of this, cherry pick some bit of this that's useful, and maybe it will come up for you tomorrow or the day after, the day after. And you're like, oh yeah, maybe I should just sit for a minute and see which of those epithets of the Dhamma I can remember. Yeah, and if you do that, it will be for your long-lasting happiness and welfare. And you don't take my word for it, give it a try. So on this Uposatha night, this new moon, I offer this for your consideration.